Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Your Blank What Now podcast. My name is Marcy Nettles, and I am your host. And I absolutely adore being able to highlight the stories of other people that I come in contact with to where they've had the opportunity to either break down or break through. Because I know that every single one of us are faced with life circumstances more now than ever before, that sometimes we're not quite sure how to get through them. And so by sharing these stories with you, you can see how others have gone through their dark times and turned that chaos into joy. So my guest today, I am so excited to be able to share her with you because we've actually already had her son and daughter-in-law on the show previously. And if you haven't heard episode number 3 with Julian Sato or episode number 6 with Sandy Sato, you definitely need to go and take a listen to both of those. And you'll hear even more today from my amazing guest that's just going to really kind of blow your mind on how her life began, how it progressed, and then moved to where she is today. So Mary Ross Smith is an author, speaker, and insurance agent. She was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, and is the youngest of 5 children. Her family moved to Los Angeles, California in 1947, where her mother was the founder of a prominent African-American mortuary. Mary spent her youth playing and working in the funeral business. In 1964, as a new parent, Mary decided to leave the funeral industry, taking a position with a local bank as a general ledger bookkeeper. She desired more challenge in her career, so she left banking and moved into a position for a large corporation in production control. After 10 years, Mary wanted more fulfillment in her life and decided to become an entrepreneur as a life insurance agent. She enjoyed helping people plan for their future and protect their loved ones. Mary was inspired to start writing her story in 2003, and in 2004, her first book, Soul Survivor, was published through Author House. Mary has 1 adult son, 2 grandsons, and a beautiful great-granddaughter. She lives in Phoenix, Arizona with her husband, Vern, who is an insurance professional as well. So I am really, really honored and blessed, Mary, to welcome you to this podcast episode today, which the title, You're Talking to Dead People. What now? Very interesting title, but welcome to the show, Mary.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me. I feel honored.
Oh, you are very welcome. You came highly recommended by both your son and daughter-in-law, and they were just like, if you haven't talked to mom yet, you've got to hear her story. And so I'm really excited to have you here. And I've been reading your book, and your story is so intriguing. Like you mentioned to me previously in the conversation, it's like a novel, how it reads, and it is just so good. So I can't wait for you to share more about that here as we talk. But, I would really love for you to be able to share with the What Now tribe, who Mary is, how your childhood started, and what it was like, and how you actually used your personality to overcome challenges.
Well, number one, this is a perfect question. Number one, the struggles are so many, but the main struggle is being an African American woman with my complexion in the South. So as I was going through life at a young age, trying to understand racism, which I didn't understand why people didn't like us. And then my mother would have me go into a restaurant and order food while she sat out in the car, or her husband, they sat out in the car because they weren't allowed to go in. Colored had to go to the back door. Those things bothered me, that I had to pretend to be Caucasian in order to get food for them. And I thought, this is just not right. And so as I began to mature and I had troubles with school because they would call me Mellow Yellow, and they would have all these nicknames. And so it was a no-win situation, actually. I mean, my African-American friends as a kid, they didn't like me sometimes because of my complexion. And of course, because I was African-American, I was limited to where I could go or what I could do. But again, I had my own ways of finding solace, and that was talking to the dead people.
Right. Oh my gosh. And I can't wait to get into the aspect of it, because your family really was in a very interesting business, the family business, right? And I would love for you to share more about the family business, how it started. And I mean, because I know it goes back generations for you.
Right.
But really, can you share how this business really kind of affected you in your growing years?
Well, in the growing years, I really didn't understand or know too much because my grandparents were deceased when I was born. But I know the one thing that I've heard about my grandfather being a patriarch. He was actually the child of a that at that time slavery was over. So I would say at that time his mother was a domestic worker and she was Haitian, but the two plantation owners, the two men, were Irish, and they took turns with her. So when she was pregnant, she didn't know, they didn't know which one was the father. So they named him J for one brother and S for another brother. And he came out so white, thin nose, thin lips. I mean, he didn't look like he had any black blood at all. So the sister raised him as her child. Their sister raised him. And by the time he was 18 or 19, I think, he was off in college. He got a phone call that his nanny, which was his mother, but he didn't know. He just thought of her as this wonderful woman that took care of him, his nanny, and that she was dying. So he rushed back to North Carolina. And on her deathbed, she told him that she was his real mother. Now, the contrast is unbelievable because she is Haitian, and that is really very dark complected skin. And he is lighter than me.
Right. Because you are very fair skinned.
Right, exactly. So it really took a turn on his soul, on how he felt about life. And finally, he realized that he had to accept that he had black blood, and his mother, she didn't die. So he ended up taking her to Louisiana, getting away from North Carolina, and saw that African American or Negroes, I have to use that word at that time, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, didn't have ways of proper burial. And so he took it upon himself to buy a milk truck and made it a hearse. And he went to embalming school and he had all these licenses, and he helped perfect an embalming fluid that would preserve a body for more days. And so he became very wealthy. You have this very wealthy African Negro man in Louisiana back in the 1800s or early 1900s. And he became the patriarch. I mean, everyone loved him and adored him. So he had 5 children, my mother, and it was 4 girls and 1 boy. But my mother was spoiled rotten, growing up as a Negro and rich back in the early 1900s was almost unheard of. And so they bumped heads a lot, but he was a good man. And so it was good to learn this kind of history because it helped me to understand where maybe my character, my inward character, was beginning to come out as I began to mature. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, well, there was a lot of conflict in your life as you were growing up. And that conflict, you really kind of found solace in this business, in this family business. How did it really personally benefit you having your mother? Because your mother, and please explain that, how your mother actually started her own in Los Angeles.
Right. My mother was an entrepreneur. She was an incredible woman. She was awarded Mother of the Year by Governor Brown back in the 50s.
Wow.
And I remember sitting in the audience and thinking, they don't know her. They just don't know her because she was a businesswoman, this incredible, beautiful, attractive woman in Los Angeles. And she had this funeral home that was bearing celebrities and all these famous preachers. And there's a lot of funny funerals in the book. But she was a businesswoman up to 5 o'clock. And after 5 o'clock, she was an alcoholic. And she was highly sexed. She loved men. She loved to party. And by the time, me being the baby of 5, all my siblings had left. By the time I was 9 or 10, the brunt of her frustrations was all taken out on me. So when her men friends would come and molest me, and I would run and tell her, she would tell me I was lying, that I was making this up, and that I was flirting with them. I'm 10 years old, and I'm flirting with these grown men. And I couldn't believe that my mother wouldn't believe me, and it hurt me so bad, I didn't know where to go or what to do. So we lived above the funeral home for a long time. And so I would go downstairs into the casket room, or the viewing room, where the body is waiting for the funeral the next day. And I would talk to the dead person in the casket, and I would put my hand on top of their hands. And even though they were hard and cold to the touch, they were warm to me because they couldn't hurt
Mm.
me. And I could tell them everything that was going on, and I could cry, and they didn't judge me. But then my mother told me if I cried too much, I wouldn't be able to pee. And if I, and I would end up dying from a kidney disease. So I learned not to cry. I learned to hold everything in. But I realized that by talking, I did help. I felt better. So I found a new dead person every day and went and shared with them what was going on every night. And that just helped.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things with this podcast and being able to help people share their stories and understanding that when we share the things that hurt us, not in a way that we want sympathy or we're saying pity me, but in a way of just trying to get it off of our chest and to be able to share it vulnerably, it's healing. It's part of the healing process. So you went where the people couldn't hurt you
Right, exactly.
because
Exactly.
everywhere else you were really quite victimized.
Well, I was vulnerable. I was there, and my mother was drunk and passed out. And so these men, it could be a preacher, it could have been a choir director. It didn't matter. It's just like every night there was somebody. I tried to board my door up, but it didn't help. They could push the door open, and so it was. Yeah, it was. I often hate to even think about it because it took a long time to be able to realize. I sort of put all of that in a closet in my mind. So I had all these little doors in my mind, and each one was a closet with something else that had happened. But I realized what helped me the most, as you said, is talking, is telling. The best kept secret is have no secrets. And so I made a point to start telling people, but not until I wrote the book. And that was a spiritual awakening to write that book.
Yes, and it's such a, I mean, I can't wait to get into it even deeper than I am right now. But I mean, from what time period, what ages were you that you were finding solace with dead people? From what age to what age were you talking to
From
dead
the
people?
earliest age I can remember, um, I've always been around them. I've always been in the bombing room. I've always been able to see the dead people. Some were very, because of the racism and lynchings, I saw bodies that I didn't want to see. But I've always been able to go into the embalming room and feel very comfortable and not be afraid, just knew that it was just a body. I knew that their soul wasn't there and they couldn't hurt me. But for me, it was like most kids had dolls, they had animals. I didn't have anybody. I didn't even have a doll. I don't know why I never had a doll. I was thinking about that. I never had a doll. I can't remember Christmas ever. So they were like my dolls. You know, I knew I'd have a new one every day. And I would look at their name and I'd call them by their first name, or if it was an older person, I'd call them Mrs. And I'd ask them, I said, if you were alive, would you adopt me? You know, little things
Oh,
like this. I was thinking, were you a good mother? Would you take me? Would you take me in? But it was just a kid's way of using the mind over matter to just protect yourself. And it was fun. You know, I mean, the things that dead bodies do, a lot of people don't realize. I mean, you know, you could be sitting there and the body's on the table, and all of a sudden the arm flops over, and you're like, "What?" You know, oh no, you want to run. You
oh
know.
my gosh, I'd freak out. I would
Oh yeah,
freak
I did
out.
the first couple of times, but the thing is, this always goes back to being able to talk to somebody, and I encourage that all the time because it bothers me when people walk around sad and they not, you know, I know that they've had trouble. They say, well, you don't know my background. And I said, well, you don't know mine. But the bottom line is that I find the best way to heal is to share it with somebody. When you share your story, you will find hundreds, not just one. I felt when I wrote Soul Survivor that if I could reach one person, that I was doing what God wanted me to do. And believe it or not, the lady that edited my book the first time was in Oregon. I've never met her, but she called me and she was crying and she said, can you just talk to me for a few minutes? I said, certainly. And she told me her story, and it was similar to one of my stories in there. And she was crying, so I kept saying, please don't cry. I said, you're or cry, let it out, but understand you're releasing this and it's okay. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to say you did the wrong thing, because I felt I did the wrong thing also several times. Things that happened. I think I could have fought, and I did fight, but I never won. So it was like, why am I fighting? I never win. So when she told me that and I hung up the phone, I knew right then and there that was why. God had woken me up in the middle of the night on January the 10th at 3:15 a.m. and I heard a voice say, "Write your story."
Mm.
Never thought of doing it. And I said, "Oh my goodness, my husband's asleep. Where did this voice come from?" And I laid back down and I was trying to go back to sleep and I heard it again. "Write your story." Well, I'm not going to argue with something I can't see, but I do
Right.
believe in. I do believe. And that was a sign that I needed to release it. And then that's when everything started coming out. I'd have to call and verify. I had to get my brother to write a letter saying that it was authentic, that my book was true. And and I've helped so many people this way. When I do book signings or I speak at luncheons, I have so many people that come up. It makes me cry when I think about it because I'm like, I'm always has this thing of saying I'm just me. And I've heard that I shouldn't say just me because I am someone that God is using to help other people.
In
And
big ways.
in big ways. It's
Yeah.
okay to have had a bad childhood because it makes you stronger. And it's hard for somebody to pull the wool over your eyes because now you know what it's like. But
Yes.
life goes on. I'm the one that always says that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something good can happen tomorrow. And
Yes,
if
absolutely. As
if
long as you choose to have that perspective, right?
right,
If way too often it's easy for people to get stuck in the hard times because that's all they're focusing on is they're in a hard time, right? But
right,
if they have that perspective that, okay, I'm going through something really hard right now, but it's going to lead me to something good.
right, right.
So
Well, and you think every day, I used to, when I'd be in a car ride and I try to look through people's windows and see how they live their lives. And I was like, oh, I wish I lived there. Oh, I wish I lived in that with that family. I mean, it's a kid's mind. But the bottom line is the strength that I had was in my heart. Every time I ever thought of being suicidal, I mean, I was in my mind, but I didn't attempt it. But I had that thought I would be better off like the people in the funeral home, and I would be at peace. And I sleep like this often. My husband says, "Why do you sleep like a dead person?" I have this habit of just putting my hands on my chest because that's the way we place them on the body. And
right.
I said, "I don't know. It's just so comfortable for me." But the thing is, no matter how bad something is today, something really good can happen tomorrow, and you'll miss it if you commit suicide. It's not a choice for you. Don't even
Yes.
think of it. So
No,
that's usually my message.
I love that you just said that too, because with your story in this book, and I highly recommend everybody, you need to go and find this book. And she's going to give her website here at the end that will direct you to where you can get it because her story really does encompass a lot of different things. I mean, it encompasses a child being abused by her mother, the child's viewpoint of being in a home of an alcoholic, a child's viewpoint of being a victim of sexual abuse, a child trying to find solace somewhere, find safety. There's just so many different parts to your story. And then on top of it, you have the racial aspect of it, right? I mean, you were growing up in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, really. And that's when it was the hardest, right?
Right, right.
Yeah. So how were you personally affected by racism? And how did you navigate that black-white line?
Well, again, I think that's where the personality comes in.
Mm.
I learned my personality from my mother, so I never meet a stranger, and I'm friendly to everyone. And if there's a need, I try to feel it if I can feel it. And I just think my dad told me, I used to ask him because my siblings are all darker than me. I mean, we're all different colors, medium, light, brown, all colors of brown. And I used to ask my dad, I said, because he's brown, he's dark skinned. Not he's brown skinned. So I'd say, Dad, I said, why am I so light? Why am I so white? What's wrong with me? And because I look like my mother actually. And he said, well, baby, by the time we had you, we just ran out of color. So, So as a kid, that made sense. So I never thought about it anymore. I was offended by the fact that I work in places where back in the 60s, and I would have a job and they didn't know I was Black. And my boss would always come and put a Jet magazine in front of my desk. And so this Jewish girl that I sat next to, she said, why does Ahmed Bey, why does he keep putting that Jet magazine on your desk? And I said, I guess because I'm the only colored person in here. That colored was, good word to use. And she cussed me out. Why would you not tell us that you are colored? I said, well, you'd never asked. And what am I supposed to tell you? Should I put a sign on my back? Hey, by the way, as I walk in, I'm colored. No, I'm Mary. I'm an individual. And oh, it was a mess in the office. She moved. She had her desk moved away from me. And that was my first sign of understanding that people, because it was still, that was during the civil rights era and all that. And I would go just when I was with the bank, you had to be fingerprinted and bonded and everything. And I go to be fingerprinted and I write down on the application, I'm the lady's writing the application. She writes down Caucasian. She's just looking at me. She didn't ask. She just writes CA. I said, I hope that CA stands for California. And she said, no, that's Caucasian. And I said, that's what I thought. I said, but that's not right. I said, I'm actually Negro. And she says, no, you're not. I said, yes, I am. And maybe with my little jolly self, because I'm always happy. I don't know where this happens. I know where it comes from, but this is me. I'm always in a very good mood. And so I said, no, seriously, I am Negro. She says, no, I can't believe that. And I said, ma'am, why would I stand here and try to pass for colored? Why would I try to pass for color? This is civil rights area. If I was white, why would I try to pass for color? She says, look, I don't know why you're trying to be funny, but it's not funny. So she calls her supervisor. The supervisor goes through the same thing. I have to go home, bring family pictures, my birth certificate. It was unreal. So those are the kind of things that I've had to go through as a young person. And I understand that we're all in two different worlds. People are everywhere from where they're from birth to 10 or birth to 7. We have our ideals, and whether they're right or wrong, they're still embedded in us. And I learn to accept people that way. So when I look at people, I often try to find out something about their childhood, and then I pretty much know where they're thing. But I prayed and I've learned not to judge people just by looking at them, just to know them. Because we just went on a cruise, and I don't want to take up the time, but we were on a cruise, and I was telling my husband on that cruise, there was every nationality you could think of, from servers to people. I mean, every nationality. And everybody was happy. Everybody was happy. It's a cruise, of course. But why can't the world be like that? Why can't we just accept people for who they are? They're from a different country. They grew up different. Some people like greens, some people like caviar. Okay. I mean, I had to grow up understanding that I grew up on soul food. So when I go to restaurants, it's very difficult because I'm always looking for soul food. So this is the difference with rational, unrational people. I think they just think that everything is their way and right. And so you don't argue with them. You just make conversation with them and be friendly. That's all I do.
Yeah, that's so good. I was going to ask you, how are you not judgmental? Because of everything that you've been through, and you just explained that so beautifully, is that you try to put yourself in their position and try to understand what they lived through as a child, because we do, lay that foundation of who we are and what our belief processes will be for the rest of our life as a child.
Everybody has a history. Everybody has a past life, and they just, you acknowledge it, you admit it, you get through it. Even in my family, I tell family members now, and I meet other people, and they'll start telling me their story, and I'll say, well, have you shared this with your sister? Have you shared this with your brother or your father? Or no, I would never share. I said, so you're carrying this guilt and this feeling of inadequacy. You don't want to be marked as being that you're labeled as being, because some people will say, oh, you're bad material, or you've been used. But you know what? You're who you are. And the person that you're going to love is going to love you for who you are, not for what happened as your childhood. You know, it's how you are in the now. My Tai Chi teacher said one day, she said, "What are the 2 days that don't matter?" And everybody came up with something. And finally, she said, "Yesterday is one, because you can't undo it. You can't do anything about yesterday." And she said, "And tomorrow, it doesn't matter, because you're not sure you're going to be here. You know, you assume you're going to wake up, but you don't know what's going to happen." And the perfect example is this young man that just fell off of a 12-foot ladder.
Mm.
I mean, a young, healthy man, and now that might be a vegetable. So that's what I look at. I live it right now. And it takes time to get into that phase. I meditate, I pray, I trust, and I don't judge people. I don't care who they are. Even what that man did in the schools in Texas is unforgivable. You know, that's all I can say is unforgivable. But I don't know what his life was like. I don't know if his mind was he mental, whatever it was. There's no excuse for it. But for him, he had a reason,
Yeah.
and we don't know what that is. So I just pray for the children's souls. I know they're with God. I know that. And I pray for the parents. I can't even imagine what they're going
Yeah. Amen. Amen. You know, I look at you today and I'm like, Mary, who do you think you would have been if you hadn't gone through all of these different things in your life? I mean, would you be the same person that you are today?
Probably not. I one of the things that I regret the most is that even though my mother was educated, went to college, she didn't encourage not one of us to go to school.
Mm.
So I didn't finish school. And she never woke me up and said, go to school, never told me to take a bath and go to bed. I don't know how I learned to do these things. I think it was from my older sister until she went off and married and left me too. Um, but they all went through a lot too. So I couldn't judge them. I couldn't be angry with them for leaving me because they were going through so much. So how could I be angry with them for trying to get away? It's just that I was the youngest and couldn't get away. So no, I think if I had have had the education, because I realized that I'm not as dumb as people used to tell me. You know, I was always a silly kid, always taking chances, jumping out of trees, jumping off the roof into a bunch of leaves. You know, I remember those kind of activities that I was always a daredevil. And I would do silly things and, put a rock in my ear. You know, I'm a kid. I do silly things that rock stayed in there for 20 some years.
Oh
I'm
my
serious.
gosh.
I'm serious. And I went to the doctor and I said, could you look in my ear and tell me if there's a rock in there? And he said, are you serious? I said, yes. And he did. There was a rock in my ear. I had put it in there when I was like 8 or 9 years old. Why I did it, like kids put peas up their nose.
Right.
Anyway, but that's what I'm saying. So my family would always tell me I was dumb and stupid. Nobody ever said, oh, you're clever. I learned to read by reading all the billboards because I don't remember going to school. Now that unfortunately is a part of some type of amnesia that I have, they say, but I have no memory of school, not a teacher, not a desk, nothing. Even though
Wow.
I went to school, I went in Louisiana when I did go to school. The one day that I remember, I don't remember the classrooms or anything, but I remember some kids in a bus throwing rotten eggs at us as we walked by, my siblings. And that was because we were Negroes and they were all Caucasian. And it was an all black school. So I'm sure I had a hard time, but I don't remember all of it.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the survival.
Exactly. But I think I'm who I'm supposed to be. But I wish in my heart that I could have easily been a doctor, a lawyer, a psychiatrist, mainly a psychiatrist, because I love studying human behavior, because I like to find out what makes people do the things that they do. And so when people say, well, what makes you do the things you do? I said, well, I just remember my dead friends and I could see their faces just like it was yesterday. And they were always there to let me touch them. And I looked so hard to see if they would breathe. And I knew they couldn't breathe. They were embalmed. But that's the mind of a child. I was so desperately looking for love and for them to hug me, and they couldn't do that. So I began to hug myself like this, and that's the way I go to sleep sometimes.
Right.
So
So with your hands over your chest.
yeah, yeah. It's just, I mean, a lot of bodies, men mainly like their hands next to the body, but a lot of women like to want to have their hands placed over their chest. And so I think that it's just, I am who I'm supposed to be, but I would have loved to have had an education and been able to go into psychiatry because I really am amazed at human behavior. And to this day, I can never explain my mother's behavior. I mean, there's no, unless she was bipolar, but in those days they didn't diagnose you. I mean,
Right.
the things that she would do, I mean, Marcy, you would just say, no way. I mean, she would put on a mink coat and walk out butt naked with the mink coat on. It's like, where are you going with nothing on? I mean, it was crazy little things like that. And then she would always make fun of me or tell me how ugly I was and all these things. And, I just looked at her as knowing she had problems, even at a young age. And because you love your parent, you still are there to take care of them. And I did. I took care of her to the day she died. Uh,
Wow. That in itself is amazing
mhm.
that you were able to lovingly care for her, even after all of these things, and even the missed opportunities, like you're mentioning with your education and what you wish you would have been able to participate in. Were there other opportunities that you missed out on during that time period?
I made a lot of mistakes. I won't call them opportunities.
Okay.
I thought they might have been opportunities, but I made a lot of mistakes. But I learned from 'em, and that was, to me, that was the best part. I did try not to make the same mistake again. But no, I can't think it was. Again, like I said, there's life is what we make of it, and things happen where they're supposed to happen, whether we know it or not. So I had no clue of what to do when you have no one telling you that you're good or that you're smart or that you can do this or you can do that. I mean, I could have been a great mortician. I could have been a great mortician because I'm telling you, I mean, I would go and talk to the families, and I'm just a kid,
Right.
but they would listen to me. At 10 and 12 and 11, 13 years old, I would go and talk to the families and try to give them peace. And so I feel like I missed my calling, because at that time, financially, it was really tough because my mother had drank herself into poverty,
Mm.
and she was still drinking, and but we had to pretty much take food to her and take care of her and stuff like that. But yeah, but it was, it made me who I am. I like me. I love me. I think because I know in my heart that I have nothing but love to give, and I'm thankful that I finally got here. So I say, God, if you took me tomorrow, at least I finally reached where you were trying to show me I should be.
Yeah,
So
that's
now
amazing.
yeah.
Well, I like you too, and I love you too. I think you're
Thank you.
amazing. And
Thank
Mary, you're an absolutely beautiful woman. And I know that through your growing up years and teenage 20s, and even now, your appearance has been a benefit for you, right? I mean, how
Right.
did your appearance help you throughout your life? And then on the flip side of that, how did you deal with all the male egos around you?
Oh goodness. Well, the funny thing is appearance was very important to my mother because of her business. So when I left the house, I had to match everything. You did not go out in jeans. At that time, we didn't even wear jeans. And you could not go out unless everything was perfect. Your hair had to be perfect, your makeup had to be perfect. And so I learned then, but it also helped because with the appearance and my personality, it did get me into jobs. I didn't get some jobs because during that time it was civil rights, and my complexion was too light, so they wanted um, darker person in the front office. And even though I had the talent, because I taught myself how to type. I never went to school for these things. I took one class at night and bought the book, and I came home and began to type, and I taught myself to type. So I had skills. So I thought to myself, I couldn't be too stupid. I mean, my mother keeps telling me, you're not going to amount to nothing. And my dad told me, you're going to end up just like your mother, a drunk with a bunch of children. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. And so my desires and my goals were always to succeed in whatever I did, and And if I had to use my appearance and my even flirting, whatever it took to get me into making men feel that they wanted to be superior, but I knew I was smarter. But I didn't have to boast about it. I just had to show them. And you do come across at that time, they want to keep you in the kitchen, they want to do this, they want to do that. And I said, no, that's just not for me. you know, it's just not for me. So yeah, it's appearance to me was very important. I taught my son that. I taught my nephew that, and Sandy already, she's perfect, and I just love her. Yeah, she's like my daughter. People think she's my daughter and he's the son-in-law because they say we look more alike than he and I. But yeah, appearance and men's ego is really, you can't get it away from them. They're just born with it, and they're not willing to deal with it. So I just work around it. I don't know if it was flirting or whatever it was that would get me the position I wanted to do. I didn't sleep with anybody, don't get me wrong, but I had my way of getting along with people and with men that were in higher authority that could move me up. So that worked for me. And
Well, you had a perfect combination of personality, your appearance, right?
right,
And your intellect and intuition.
right,
And you use them all.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
Dress for success, right?
Yes.
Haven't you heard that? Dress for success.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's very important. Dondi always gives me a hard time when I tell him, okay, babe, we can't clash. We've got to match. We can't clash. He's like, we don't have to match all the time. I'm like, yeah, we do. If we're going outside the house, yes, we kind of do. Yeah. So I'm totally there with you. So Mary, I would really love for you to think for just a second and just think of something that if you could go back to maybe little Mary when she was 10 years old, 11 years old, 12, as she was getting really into the difficult times of her childhood, is there something that you would like to share with her or tell her?
Don't commit suicide. That's not an option. And don't give up. Never give up. Something good might happen tomorrow. And if you do, you'll miss it. Little Mary didn't want to live. She really didn't. And I have to understand, I had to separate myself from little Mary and me today. But little Mary was a very unhappy child. I mean, you'll never see a picture with her smiling. Never a happy picture. I was going through pictures recently because they're working on hopefully a TV series. We're going to have a TV series. That's the prayer. So I do have a Hollywood manager and he's working on that. But I was looking for pictures because they'll have to find a child, try to find someone lookalike. But there's not one picture of me smiling. And it's because all I wanted to do was get in that casket with the people, with the dead people. I just wanted to lay next to them and just be at peace. And I felt that was the only place that was peace, because 24 hours a day, there was no peace. And I was a maid. I cleaned up. I had to fight off my mother's friends. I had to empty the ashtrays, and she wanted me to drink. She really wanted me to be a drinker. So she would push me, and I'm 12 or 13 years old. She'd say, here, you can drink some vodka with orange juice and it won't taste so bad. So when she wasn't looking, I'd act like I was pouring the vodka into the glass, but I would be pouring it down the side of the glass. So you couldn't see that it was running down the sink. And so I would just be sipping on orange juice, but she thought I was drinking. And so, because she made my sister an alcoholic, she made her drink. She kept saying, here, drink it, drink it. Why? Why does she do these things? I could never understand. But at 10 years old, I didn't want any part of any of it. I wanted a way to escape. And I had the pills. I don't confess this too often, but I had the pills because she had Valiums, and I had the pills ready to take. And every night I'd look at those pills, and I had a little bottle of vodka that she got off of the airplane. And I had it next to my bed in the drawer. And every night I'd look at it and I'd say, well, it's tonight. Should I do it tonight? And then there's something in my head would say, but if you do, something really good can happen tomorrow and you're going to miss it. And the curiosity of me always wanting to understand things, I didn't want to miss anything, So somehow that just kept coming up in my mind. But I was suicidal. No one wants to admit it, but I admit it because there's so many young people, not just women, but men. And I've had men come up and share their story and say how my story touched them,
Yes.
but they've wanted to commit suicide. And I always say suicide is not an option. It's not a checkbox. No, you don't want to check that box. You just want to realize that what happened today is now gone. And tomorrow something good is going to happen. So just hold on. But the tomorrow after tomorrow, nothing good happened. I mean, nothing happened good actually. And this sounds terrible, but my life didn't turn around until I met my husband. I mean, it turned around, don't get me wrong. I was still me. I still was working. I still had my personality. I still loved people. But what people didn't know about me, because I'm so outgoing, they think that I'm an extrovert when I'm really an introvert. When I would come home, I didn't go out of the house. I was afraid of the dark. I mean, at 50 years old, I was still afraid of the dark. And to this day, I have just come through that cycle where I can walk through the house in the dark, you know. So everything takes its time, but no, little Mary is a really sad little girl. And I don't know how I would get through this part of her childhood when they're, making the movie or the series. I don't know how I'll get through that, because even talking about it sort of chokes me up, because to think that there's no hope is the worst thing in the world, is to have no hope. And if it weren't for the dead people, even though they couldn't talk to me, they let me talk. And as you can see, I'm a talker.
And I love it. You have so many good things to say.
So I think that if I could go back at 10 years old, I would wish I had a mother that would send me to school and would encourage me to go to college and encourage me to have dreams. I didn't have any dreams. But when I met my husband in 1996, I had been through a couple of bad marriages, and I had given up on men. Their egos, and men were I just realized I was not going to allow anyone to put me down and make me feel that I was a servant, or I had to do this, I had to do that to make them happy. If you don't love me for who I am, then I'm not going to be your maid. So when I met Vern, it was actually on a blind date. I'm making a short story. But when I met him, it was like he was standing outside near a pool, near my sister's pool. And I walked through the door, and it was like there was this light behind him. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but it was like there was this light behind him. And when he smiled at me, my heart just went to my feet. I knew right then and there that I was shocked, because I couldn't believe that I could melt. Because when it came to men, I hadn't dated anybody in 11 years. The couple of people I had dated was just because I wanted to go to the Olive Garden, or something like that. But there was nothing. And he just won my heart. And then I moved to Sedona 5 months after I met him, and we were married. And Sedona was a new beginning, because again, there were no Black people. It's an all white town.
Yes.
There's probably only one or two servers there that are Black, but it's wealthy people. And he was wealthy. Not that I married him for that, but I had never been outside of Louisiana and Los Angeles. So this was very new to me. So I had to, again, start telling my story. I'm African American. We go to dinner with these big parties with all these wealthy people. And are you Italian? No. Are you Jewish? No. You don't have an accent. You're not Spanish, are you? No. I'm African American. No, you're not. Okay, I'm lying, but I'm African American. So it's just, it's never left me. It seems like my childhood of being an African American woman has never left me. It's always the challenge of having to tell people. And some people reject me, most people love me. But everybody in Sedona loved me. And I did a speech at a luncheon, 250 women, and I sold 250 books.
Oh, that's awesome.
Or more. But I didn't even have the book published at that time. So
Wow.
they all sent orders in. But I think that because it's such a unique story, because it's like a roller coaster. And as you read it, one chapter will take you down, but hopefully the next chapter will take you up. And then the next chapter will take you down a little bit. Then the next one will make you laugh, because you can't understand some of these funeral home stories. And it's a lot.
Well, it's a beautiful book depicting life, the ups and downs of
Yeah.
life, right?
Marcy, I so thank you for allowing me to speak and interviewing me, just talking with me, because believe it or not, it just fills my soul with happiness, because I know it's okay. If you're happy in reading my story and you're getting a message from it, then that's why I wrote it. That's why I had to get it out of me. It's what we keep inside of us that makes us sick. But if you regurgitate everything that has held you back, then you can't do anything but move forward.
Yes.
So this is the only message I try to give. It sounds like I'm always preaching.
No,
Basically.
no, it's absolutely perfect. It's beautiful. It's connective. It's vulnerable. And, I'd really like for you to share next with the What Now Tribe what it means to be a giver to you.
Oh, I think you can never outgive a giver.
No.
You can never outgive a giver. And there isn't anything that I have that I won't give away, because I know there's never a U-Haul truck behind a hearse. So there's nothing in that casket. When my son's father died, he wanted to put a ring in it. I said, no, baby, don't do that. Uh, Either the grave diggers are going to open up the casket and see, or it's going to just go into the dirt. This was your dad's, hold on to it. But anything that I have, if somebody really wants it, I'll say, here, take it. I have take off jewelry many times that somebody will say, oh, I love that. I said, really, you want it? Brent says, why do you do that? I said, because if they love it, maybe they need it more than I do, and just giving it to them. So you can't outgive a giver. And the joy I get from seeing people happy is the only joy I need, because then we can laugh and talk about anything, because now you have that bond of she's not selfish, she's not, And my house, I have so much stuff. Do I really need all this? No, it's because I'm not needy. I'm not, what I say, I'm not needy, I'm greedy. That's what I always tell people. And I see things and I'll keep buying and buying. But then I come and people come and I said, oh, please take it. Do you want that? You want that picture? I've got to, whatever. Uh, if they need it, then I try to fill their need. And I think you can't outgive a giver. And I get more joy in giving than receiving. And I don't know why, but I do.
Well, you know what? I love that. And I think that that's exactly why you were woke up that night and
Mhm.
directed basically to write your story,
Mhm.
because your story is giving, right? As you've given of the darkest areas of your soul and to the brightest, you are giving to others such a gift that giving somebody a physical item is no big deal. What
Right.
you've given inside of your book is truly, like the name of it, Soul Survivor. It's your soul.
Mhm.
And I just think that that is the greatest gift that anybody can give is the actual who we are and what we've been through. And hopefully in sharing our stories, we're helping others be able to get through what they're going through as well. So I would love for you to be able to share a little bit more about the book, about what you're doing now. I mean, you've mentioned, a series potentially for this book, which I think would be phenomenal. And so guys, if you're listening right now, if you have any connections with anybody in filmmaking and
Yes.
in Hollywood, anybody that could help Mary, please, get connected with her, get connected with me so that I can connect you guys all together. But this is definitely a story that needs to get out there on a broader scale. So Mary, please share a little bit more about what's going on and what you're doing to spread joy to the world.
Well, I do have a manager, a Hollywood manager, Michael Abrams. And when he read the story or heard about it, he said, I have to meet this woman. I have to meet this woman. So we met. And he said, this is too much for one movie. So it really would be a TV series. So, but then COVID hit. And then COVID just locked down Hollywood. So everything has sort of been on hold. But now it's getting a little bit better. So he's getting out there again. And I think I always saw it as a sitcom, like All My Children, a long time ago. At that time when I wasn't that much of a believer, but I did believe in something. But I loved All My Children and I watched it every day. And I used to say to myself, my story is so much different than this. I would love to see my story on TV. And so it's been years and it hasn't happened yet. But I can't afford to get discouraged because, again, I'm the one that preaches something good can happen tomorrow. Didn't say it would happen the first year. It didn't say it would happen the fifth year or the 10th, but I know it's going to happen. So I just hang in on there. And I think that it will still help other people. I mean, it's not like people looking for entertainment most of the time to get away from reality. But I think with the reality of the book and the humor and my survival techniques, or things that I did do to try to survive, um, I think that people will see real life and not just bury their head into the shoot 'em ups, you know. But there's a lot of bad people in the funeral business. There's a lot of bad people in life. And there's a lot of preachers that I talk about. And I know that that doesn't go over too well. But I'm not saying all preachers, I'm just saying that were in my life. And at that time, back in the 50s and 60s, um, there was some really underhanded, unethical preachers.
Yes.
And that is what the next book is about. SOS. And so he's in the first book, but he's also in the second book because he's really is a hard story to tell, but it's more like a mystery. So, and I did the best I could with it, but I just had to get that out of my heart because this man was the epitome of darkness. And that's why I to this day, I don't so much trust preachers. I go to church, but I always examine their life. That's what I try to examine. Do they walk the talk?
Yes.
And that's all I want to know. And if they don't, then I just move on. So, and that's what I try to explain to people. You just can't believe what everybody says. And even if you're in a moment of need, I think, you know what, Marcy, I think the main thing is that everyone is looking for an out. And we grab at the first thing that comes along, but we don't question where it came from. But there's always roots to everything. That's why I like the tree of life, because you see the roots that are so deep in the ground, and then you see this beautiful tree. So everybody that comes to you and preaches that, this will be better, that'll be better, you need to know more about their life, you know. And I even had a preacher do that to me. He came to me and said, God told me that you're supposed to take care of me while I go through ministerial school. And I was like, really? And he said, yes. He says that you should be able to, you can take care of me, help me through my ministry, and so that I get my license. Now, this wasn't a proposal. This wasn't come live, I want to date you or anything. I want to come live with you and probably date too. And I said, well, I appreciate what you said, and I'm sure you believe that. But I have to say this, God didn't come to me.
Right.
When he comes to me, then that's a different story. But, he came to you. It's a one-sided story here. So he got so mad at me. But I said, I'm not taking care of you. I'm not going to, And so you want everybody to just give you money and help you while you just do nothing but study. All the times I've been working, I've been going to night school, always studying psychology, always trying to learn something. May not be able to complete a course, but I've always gone and learned enough that I could work with. So, no.
Well, Mary, that's the thing about your story in this interview today. We have barely scratched the surface, right? And so that's why, the listeners definitely, guys, What Now Tribe, I'm talking to you right now. You need to go and you need to be able to get these books because you will be able to read the depth of the story that is Mary's life. And so, Mary, where can people connect with you and follow you that they can get connected to your book, your website, all that kind of stuff? What is that?
The website is www.maryrossmith.com. And my email is the same, maryrossmith@msn.com.
Awesome. And then social media, you're on Facebook, Instagram. What are you on?
Yes, I'm on all of them.
Okay. And LinkedIn as well. So we'll make sure that everybody gets connected there, but go and connect with Mary and just She is so sweet. She would love to be able to have you reach out on her website. You can connect with her. And I know, Mary, we had talked about something that you would potentially like to give to the people that connect with you. We had talked about the 10 things that you've learned becoming a soul
Okay.
survivor.
Okay. The thing, okay. I'm like, uh-oh.
No,
Is
it's
it, is
okay.
it, is it a picture on the wall? What is it? My
Yeah, it's not
necklace?
it's not one of your physical things, even though you do look beautiful.
Oh,
And I'm sure that you have many things that people would desire, but
yeah.
but no, your life is a lesson. And I think, those 10 tips we had talked about of what you learned becoming that soul survivor.
I learned that everything is right now, today,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then to not judge anyone because I don't know what anyone's life is like. But they might be crying for help and I don't know it, but I want to be able to understand. I um I understand that there's always going to be a color line. I've learned from that, but it doesn't offend me. I make a joke out of it because I have no way of changing my complexion. I mean, I used to sit out in the sun trying to get dark. I never did. All I did was burn. And I think that again, I feel like I missed out my opportunities, but then I learned how I benefited from so many things, from my appearance, from my personality. My husband is he's got a great personality, but when he met me, that's what he fell in love with because he said, "You can talk to anybody." I said, "Well, if I can talk to dead people, I think I can talk to live people too." You know?
Yes.
So I'm comfortable with anyone. I don't care where they're from, who they are. We can find a way to communicate. And I don't know. I think that every day life is a lesson. We learn something. And I learned that I have a new friend. I met you once before, I think, but I know your husband. I've met him, and I definitely am a tandem user. And
Yay.
yay, and it has definitely helped me with my kidneys. Sounds hard to believe, but how can your kidneys go down? I don't know how the numbers can go down, but they did after a month of taking
It's a
Protandim.
beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing, but again, it's every day is meant to happen. So I listen, I learn, and I just love. I try to give, and I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I make my mistakes, and then I when I realize I've done them, I apologize. But life itself is just one big lesson. We're not here to gather material things. Uh, this house could burn down and everything is gone in a minute. And so why put so much value in something material? And people say you have so much beautiful jewelry, and I'm like, I give it away. I mean, I've given away so much gold jewelry, I couldn't even believe it, but I can't wear it all. I mean, I don't even wear it. So why should I hold on to it? So people say, well, you can sell it. I know. Why do I want to sell it when I can make somebody happy with it? You know? So I've given away beautiful gold chains, rings to all of my stepdaughters, to my sister-in-laws, and anybody. Like if I have a ring that I really don't wear often, and somebody compliments it, I try to get it off. I say, "You can have it." They're like, "Are you kidding?" No,
I love it. You truly are just a,
but
a beautiful soul and giver, 100%.
every moment is precious, and this moment right now with you is precious. I am so grateful for you. I mean, when I first saw you, I said, "Oh my God, she's so beautiful."
So
And the
sweet.
more I learn about you, I'm thinking you are the incredible woman. And I mean, truly, you need to tell your stories. You are an incredible woman. And I'm blessed to know you. I love you. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Oh,
I mean, there isn't anything I wouldn't do for you.
oh,
If you
thank you.
called and needed me, I would make a way to get there.
And I
So
know that. I
yeah.
know that. And I love you as well. And we feel the same way about you and your family. Just love you so much. Mary, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being such a beautiful guest today and sharing your heart, sharing your book and your story. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's ditto. I appreciate you more.
Oh,
Thank you.
well, this has been a phenomenal episode. What Now, Tribe? I hope that you have enjoyed this. The title has been You're Talking to Dead People. What Now? With my amazing, amazing guest, Mary Ross Smith. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you.